Yeah, over to you, Rodrigo.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Anita. Thank you all for coming, being here. I'm Rodrigo Assunção. I'm a social protection management information systems specialist. It takes a while to say that. It takes longer to actually understand what I do, but I do that at the International Labour Organization. So if we can quickly move ahead, as Anita mentioned, I'm here to talk about the context of this workshop. As we all are fully aware, there's a huge diversity of social protection programs. There's a huge diversity of the environment where these social protection programs are structured, are implemented. There's a huge diversity of the way the information technology industry is set up in these environments. And that is the overall context where we're at. We can keep on. And when we talk about digital social protection, there's the obvious knowledge that information systems are completely indispensable for the delivery of public policies as in general, and specifically for social protection. And that is where the discussion of digital social protection comes in. Social protection delivery systems, as we all know, are quite complex. They connect with many different databases and many different service components within a society, within a context. And we need to discuss this in an integrated and interoperable manner. These social protection systems are what enables us to be efficient, to be responsive, to provide this service delivery. USP, Universal Social Protection, 2030. That's the overall structure where we're at. I'm going to discuss a little timeline further, but we're talking about these connections with social registry, with ID systems, with government to payment systems, government to person systems, integrated beneficiary register, CRVSs, like we're going to be discussing today, tax, pension, and different specific programs. Because all this helps us to discuss the eligibility, duplication check, targeting, administration, enhance the user experience and thus the connection with society, and of course, our capacity to evolve as an adaptive social protection provider or scheme offer. Let's go ahead. So you've all seen these very nice little cartoons about how when we take into account the difference between the original understanding of the needs, the understanding of whoever starts trying to implement that, the different design choices, the actual coding, the business consultant, the idea where you have to have buy-in, documentation as my favorite part of this cartoon, the absence that often screams at us, and then the discussion goes further, and when we come back and return to the actual needs. So with this very much in mind, we really discussed when we were talking about this project, that we would refuse to reinvent the wheel, and that our main discussion was about the lack of interoperability. And what we came up with in the next slide is this timeline, where, as you can see on top, a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of different organizations that are active within this context started discussing from 2019 onwards. You originally in the Digital Social Protection Working Group that was established under SPIAC-B, and then the USP 2030 Membership Assembly approves the suggestion made by SPIAC-B to create this convergence initiative. And we are trying to find ourselves to structure different streams, different work streams that we're going to be explaining in a second, in order to contribute to this very complex environment that we're here discussing. So in the next slide, we talk a little bit about where we're at the Digital Convergence Initiative. It's, as mentioned, a joint effort by USP 2030 members and non-members, governments, development partners, and private sector. We hope to create a harmonized and interoperable digital ecosystems for social protection. Our inspiration is the health sector, which is further ahead on the same journey, even though they are also embarking and they're still on this journey. And we hope to build consensus-based standards for interoperability. To foster an ecosystem for innovation that will allow us to reduce time and costs, that will offer us and all these activists with different components that we would be able to mix and match, and ensure that the systems and the investments and the comprehension that comes from all this is future-proof by design. So this is the context where we're doing our work. In the next slide, I will talk a little bit, the following slide. Here is how we're organized. The steering committee, Digital Convergence Initiative, is taken forth by the ILO, the World Bank, and GIZ. And Veronica, Melis, and Anita lead us in this effort. And then the free streams of work for inclusive social protection programs delivery that we've started since last year, since the end of last year. We have had a very interesting and even fascinating, I would say, series of webinars, which were called the Dialogue Series, that showcase one country every month. We share the approach, the technical details, the obstacles, the hurdles to get to the interoperability stage that these countries have reached. The discussants have a dialogue with country experts, and we've had India, Belgium, Turkey, Chile, Cambodia, and France. And we are continuing practically every month. We've also had a very interesting collaboration with open source software providers. We recognize that open source software and the whole public goods understanding of products are quite close to the objectives of the Digital Convergence Initiative. And we hope to facilitate the integration between these OSS providers in order to try to structure this open source software stack for social protection that can really make a difference in the implementations. We've had 7 leading OSS providers contributing to that. HOPE, OpenIMIS, MIFIS, OpenCRVS, OpenG2P, Mujaloop, Mozip, and all these have managed to structure some quite interesting possibilities of cooperation. And then we come to the stream that we are here setting out to start the work. We've started by doing 3 different areas of interoperability standards that we are discussing: the civil registration systems, the foundational IDs, the payment platforms, and we want to implement this interface in a sandbox, not only to prove the concept and validate, but to enhance and take forth the discussion that we feel is so important among these different groups. And to close, the last slide will explain a little bit about where we're at for this workshop. So in a program MIS, the Beneficiary Operations Management System will engage and interoperate with many different elements. The social registry, the grievance redressal platform, a foundation ID platform, as I mentioned, the civil registry, the payment platform, a data analytics platform, a GIS platform. All these elements we are focusing on three of them, which is the foundational ID platform, the civil registry, and the payment platform. So this focus is what we're working now, and this is the scope of the phase one of this work area that I described. And here today, we are focusing even further on the civil registry. This is the theme of today's workshop, and I really hope we can not only learn an extraordinary amount from the people working with this, but also allow us to move forward on good directions to reach all these objectives. So I thank you all. I hope the context has been set, and I ask Anita to take us into the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you for that, setting the context and the excellent background on the initiative and the work streams that you have started. To take this further, this is Anita Mittal, Senior Advisor leading the Digital Convergence Initiative for GIZ. So if we step back and see what does it take to deliver multiple different types of varied social protection programs, which Rodrigo mentioned in the first slide. You know that every country has almost hundreds of programs, different social protection programs. While they are different, we see that there is some commonality in the way these programs are delivered as a process step. So each of them go through these steps as the World Bank Sourcebook has documented it. We have these 4 stages: assess, enroll, provide, and manage, within which you have multiple sub-steps where applicants register for a program. You assess the needs and conditions of the different beneficiaries, potential beneficiaries, determine if they are eligible as per the conditions of the particular program, and determine what are the benefits they should get, onboard them, provide them with benefits, keep monitoring if the benefits are getting delivered properly, address the grievances, and also take decisions on their exit from the program. So this is a typical delivery chain cycle for any SP program. So as we see the different use cases and steps in the different slides, you will see them getting discussed and shown.
Anita, you muted yourself.
Yep.
Sorry, thank you. So let us understand how would a program, social protection program, which delivers old age allowance to the old, be delivered in a country which has no digital systems. So now we have Mala, who is age 75, and the government has a program which provides benefits for people who are aged above 70 or 65. So if she wants to apply for this scheme, she takes a whole big file of documents and goes to the SP Authority office. So there she fills in a registration form, provides all the requested documents: birth certificate, income tax certificate, residence proof, age proof, whatever is required. A list of documents are provided. Now the SP Authority wants to validate the authenticity or validity of those documents. So they send it via postal mail or email or through courier, these documents to the different officials who will verify them with their paper records. And this process of sending could take about 2 to 10 days. And the results from the different officials could take up to 2 months. Once these results are fetched by the authority, they have a huge pile of records pending. They could take anywhere from 1 day to a month to process this record, then inform Mala that she is eligible and she would now need to come and show that she's alive and provide her bank details. So then Mala comes on a fine day, provides all her bank details, which are then slowly sent to the bank and a payment made. And all this time, it could easily be 6 months. It could be 3 months or to a year, but on average, we think it might be about 6 months. So let's move on and see what happens if the country had digital systems, but there was no interoperability between those systems for the same old age allowance scheme. So we have the ID system, the CRVS system, and the payment system, and the SP beneficiary management system. But these are not connected electronically. And here comes Mala again with her file of documents. She might register online or provide the documents for the officer to register her. Once Mala is registered, her data is sent to the ID agency for validation. Now, since we have these electronic systems, it may take about 2 to 5 days for the request to go, validation to happen, and the results to come back. Similarly with CRVS system, and probably in 10 to 45 days, Mala may be asked to come back and verify and provide her bank details. She comes and the payment process cycle takes. I'm not going into the different steps, but for this whole cycle to come, from months, we have come to weeks. And now probably in about 6 to 8 weeks or some X number of weeks, she may be able to get her benefit. And now comes the scenario 3, which is for you to see the power of interoperability with the digital systems. So let's go back to the same scheme, which is now with Mr. John Doe. And I would request you all to look at the face expression of the potential beneficiary to realize the power of interoperability on what it can do. So John Doe, age 65, comes, gives his national ID, and since these systems are connected electronically with integrated and interoperable, he gets authenticated, say for instance, using OTP to identify and authenticate himself, which takes probably a few seconds to a minute. Once that is done, the details of that person is sent to the CRVS to verify his liveness or his birth details. You get the details, which gives his birth date and says that he has not been registered as dead in the system. And the system makes a decision based on all the provided data, whether he's eligible or not. Based on that decision, it sends the beneficiary account details to the bank, which have been provided by Joint the same moment. The registration is confirmed to John, and when the payment cycle happens, the amount goes into his bank account and is informed that money has come to your account. And look at John, how happy and joyous he is. And how much time does it take for him to know that he has been enrolled in this program and the payment comes? The payment may take a little more time, but within 5 to 7 minutes, he would know that he has become a potential beneficiary and money would come into his account. So this is to illustrate that you give good service to the beneficiaries, as well as it makes the life of the different system providers easy. While we show this happy scenario, we are cognizant that for this to happen, there are certain assumptions or preconditions that we should have these digital systems working. These systems should be integrated, and these systems should have good coverage and operating. That is, the birth deaths should be registered into the system. Otherwise, it won't happen. But for us, the importance is to define the standards between these different components so that whenever these digital systems are set up and they become operational with 90 to 100% efficiencies, the countries don't have to struggle to make them interoperable because of the standardization done done, these systems are interoperable. They all follow the standards. So tomorrow it could be Open CRVS, which is open source, or it could be HERA, which is a proprietary solution, or any other system by any other vendors. They will all be plug and play. They can work with the SPMIS, whatever system you change here, or whatever system you change here, as long as standards are adhered to by each of the systems. So this is the motivation which is driving the DCI initiative to work on the standards. So you must be asking us why interoperability with CRVS, right? So in today's workshop, as Rodrigo had mentioned, we want to deep dive on the power of interoperability of a CRVS system in the delivery of social protection programs. So as we want to see what is the role of CRVS in SP program delivery, we know that SP system documents or registers birth, death, marriage, events, life cycle events into the CRVS registry, which are very vital for delivery of social protection programs. And when integrated with National ID and Payment System, you have seen how happy John was. So, but for today's workshop, we will focus on this blue shaded box to talk about the interoperability, electronic integration between CRVS and social protection. And you still see that in different cases, it is used for determining eligibility decisions or for exit criteria from a program or for determining assessment or needs of people. So for this, I will invite a team from Access Health International, which has partnered with DCI to support in development of demo scenarios for the different interoperability streams on payment, ID, and CRVS. So I will now invite Parth to walk us through the different use cases which illustrate the power of CRVS system. Over to you, Parth.
Thank you, Anita. Hello, everyone. So moving ahead, apart from the use case of old age allowance, we'll talk about some more use cases like the stopping old age allowance payment on using death notifications, registration of widow allowance scheme, registration of child benefit scheme, and proactive delivery of benefits. So to continue the story of John Doe, which Anita explained, who was a beneficiary who got registered for the old age allowance scheme. So Mr. John Doe one day suddenly passes away and his death event is registered into the CRVS. Now CRVS periodically sends death notification on death data to its subscribers. So SPMIS receives the death data. So data can be John Doe's national ID, his name, his address, his contact details, using which SPMIS can remove his name from the beneficiary payment list so that Mr. Doe, who's dead or who's passed away, no longer receives the payment. However, as a part of next steps, SPMIS can proactively enroll or register John's widow or next in kin for benefits. So in our next use case, we have Mrs. Doe, who's John's widow, who is applying to get registered for the widow allowance scheme. She submits her national ID. The national ID is verified and she, as a beneficiary, is authenticated firstly, and then SPMIS makes a liveness check with the CRVS system. The CRVS system returns information whether she has been declared dead in the system or not. Then later, her marriage status and marriage verification is done, wherein her spouse's details are also received at the SPMIS. The spouse's details are again used to determine whether her spouse is dead or not. So using these three checks, we are first determining whether Mrs. Doe is alive or not. If she had a valid marital history with Mr. Doe, and also if Mr. Doe is live or not. Once these details are done, SPMIS can make a decision whether they want to move ahead and make the payments. So this process too similarly takes the same amount of time, 5 to 7 minutes for the registration. So another scenario that we have is for registration of child benefit scheme. So we have a couple here who is Mr. William and Mrs. Daisy, who want their daughter Emma to get enrolled in a child benefit scheme. So they are arriving at the SP offices to get their daughter enrolled. So for that sake, they are submitting their national IDs and Emma's birth registration related information. So SPMIS is firstly validating their IDs and then later making the search of Emma's records and her liveness checks with the CRVS. The CRVS is returning Emma's details, her parents' information, her birth date, and of course for the liveness check, whether she has been declared dead in the system or not. Using these details, the SPMIS can make a decision and enroll her in the child benefit scheme where she receives the payment. Now, there is a probability, like we discussed in the widow allowance program, that the SPMIS may choose proactively to provide benefits to the beneficiary. So in this scenario, we see that the SPMIS, let's just say, for instance, want to promote a village, a government where in a village, they want to promote education scheme to a girl child of a certain age group. So for that, SPMIS is making the search on the birth date or to get the age group right, and then the gender and the state code details are sent to the CRVS. The CRVS is returning a list of potential beneficiaries. The SPMIS chooses to move ahead with this list and then starts to provide the benefits. The social workers can reach out to the families from time to time to make sure that they are receiving the benefits. Now, I'm handing it over to Dhaval, who will demonstrate the CRVS interoperability in a live environment. Over to you, Dhaval.
Thank you, Parth. So, can you please present the demo screen presentation? Parth? Yeah, go to the next. Thank you. So let's start with the demo environment details first. So integration patterns, there are multiple integration patterns. So there is a first point-to-point communication where SPMIS system can communicate directly with the CRVS via REST API or SOAP API. However, in another approach, the SPMIS system communicates with the CRVS through the middleware. This middleware is maybe based on the WSO2. OpenCRVS, Microsoft BizTalk Server, or Xroad approach. We are going to demonstrate today based on the interoperability between the SPMS and the OpenCRVS through the middleware, where we have used the OpenHIM to register the middleware, and communication between these two systems happen via API. Part of the today's demo, we are just trying to cover the three different scenarios where we can make the search by the identifier. Another is the search by the demographic details. And third one is where the records are not matching with the CRVS record. So let's go with the live environment over here. Let me share my screen for that. Let me take the first look for all the environment which we have talked. So this is the SPMS demo application. This is the OpenHIM where we have registered our middleware to communicate with the OpenCRVS. And here is the sandbox in where we have just installed the OpenCRVS, install and configure for the DCI environment. So let's start with the first scenario where Mr. John Doe provide his national ID and how this SPMS system communicate with the CRVS. But before we start with the search, let's take the transaction information and transaction log for the middleware. So we can see that last transaction was recorded on the 5 o'clock and the 54 minutes as ISO standards. This is the live search demo, so that's the reason why this timings are the same. So I make this search. we see that we received the record for the John Doe based on the national ID identifier. Let's see and check the transaction logs for that. So we can see that there is a latest transaction entries based on the ISO standard 6 o'clock and the 4 minutes as per the my system. Let's take a details log for this one. Here in the request and response, we see that we make the identifier based on the national ID as a payload parameter. And we receive the result from the CRVS based on the national identification search. So we see that this is a John Doe's record and other information regarding the national ID, mother name, father name, and all other information. This is the same information which we got and display the result over here. So based on this result, the SPMS officer can validate the beneficiary details and a liveness check happen over here. Let's take another scenario where the records are not matching with the open CRVS data. So I put some identifier which record is not matching with the CRVS data and see what's happened. So see, we found no result because this identifier or this national ID does not exist in open CRVS data. So let's see and check the transaction log one more time so that we can validate this live search over here. So next we see that we got the transaction log again at the 6 o'clock and the 5 minutes, and over here we entered the dummy national ID which is not exist, and we don't get the any response from the CRVS because this national ID does not exist in our open CRVS database. Let's go and talk with the third scenario where we can make this beneficiary based on the demographic information. Let's say Mr. John is not able to provide his national ID, and based on the demographic information, we want to make this search for them. So we can make the search by the first name and the last name for the John Doe. And let's say John Doe has a contact number, so we just enter the contact number information for the John Doe over here. And make the search. So based on the demographic information, we make the search from the CRVS and display over here. Again, how this middleware communicate with the CRVS and search the data. So let's check the one more time. So in the payload, we see that we pass the John Doe information as a first name, last name, and the contact information. And based on that, we receive the information from the CRVS as a response body. So this demo covers shows the communication between the SPMS system and open CRVS via middleware. This is the demo for the today. I'd like to hand over to the Komal.
Thank you, Dhaval. So we have seen the demos and a couple of use cases today covering old age scenarios and the child benefit. The underlying to this are actually all our data standards, code directories, and APIs, which make this possible. So along with defining the workflows, we are also working on defining the standards, code directories, and APIs. I'll give you a snapshot of what it's going to look like, though a lot of work needs to be done further on it. For personas like a person, which can be a woman, a male asking for a benefit, or even a child also, we are in a process of identifying the minimum set of data that is required to be used in an interface. The type identifier for every attribute of the person and the code directories can be linked to it. So what it means is that, for example, in case person name, the person name comes with a lot of attributes. It can be the family name, given name, middle name, prefix. So that sets as an object. Similarly, the address also has its own set of required fields that is required. So we're in the process of defining all the data objects along with the code directories. So code directories here would like to show you like marital status. Let's talk about married, unmarried. However, these values are generally specific to a country specific or directly as a country specific. So we're in the process of defining it, and this is just setting up a stage to welcome people to join us working groups in the next steps, which will be taking it forward. I would also like to show you a snapshot of the APIs, which Dhaval has shown in the demonstration. This is like the national ID search which happens. And for this environment, we have used OpenCRVS to demonstrate, and the results are coming. So we'll be working to standardize these APIs, which can actually be used as a reference object with any country or any party which wants to take it forward and do a deployment. I would now like to invite my country colleagues who are in a process of doing a similar work at their level. And in the sequence, would like to invite just the Turkey team. Arkin and Ali, would you take it from here?
Mr. Ercan, are you there? Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, I am here.
Yes, very clear.
Okay. Thank you for everyone organizing this good event, and we have we will talk about the Turkish case on CRVS interoperability, and especially Mr. Ali will talk about the interoperability of Turkish system. Is it okay? Okay. Yeah. In this first slide, as you see, you can see the how we create the social registry in our system, and Turkey is Turkey's system. In Turkey, all of the governmental institutions have a strong digital system. So, especially our civil registry, we have changed this system as an address-based population registration system, and we cover all the population at the address-based, and also we have the all records about the demographic characteristic of the families, households. And the second important source of our social registry is the health registry, and we have collected in the Ministry of Health the death and birth records and the health records are instantly recorded into the system. So in our social system, we can see all the records, health records. We can take all health records from the Ministry of Family at real time. So another important source of the social registry is social insurance. It covers the social insurance and the employment records. And the fourth one is the education registry. We can check all the students' situation in the Ministry of Education's databases. Now, I think Ali, you can start to talk about our interoperability. Floor is yours, please.
Okay, I will make a little brief of the what Mr. Ercan has been mentioned. As he said, we have a strong civil registration systems for many decades, and records have been kept under record for about 100 years. But in electronical environment, this data has been kept in databases and provided to required government organizations for at least 2 or 3 decades. And our civil registration system includes every single citizen in our country, which is about over 80 million people, citizens. And also, as many of you know, that some refugee issues our country is confronting with for about a few years. And we are also recording every refugee and giving a single unique ID number to them for different operations within the government. Uh, as I said, every single citizen has a single unique ID, which is being used almost by every single government organization. Previously, some government organizations has tried to use their own IDs, but this had some potential problems. So they have quit to use their own IDs year by year, and now single unique ID, which we named as Turkey Republic identity number. Is there a problem? Can you hear or question? No. This single unique ID also refers to the name, identity information of the citizen, birth date, birthplace, address information, and address information also depends on a 10 digits identity number, and citizens are related with this address ID. And so we can query the detailed address by using this address ID. And also their marriage status and informations are kept within the system. Moreover, the relations between the citizens are also kept within the SRVS. And we can catch their relationship between them. If somebody is mother of some other citizen, we know this from this SRVS records. And also we can relate them with using their address information. And so we can compose a household using all this information. At the beginning of the including in the social registry, we stipulate this information to be provided by the civil registration system. Otherwise, we do not define any exception to take this citizen in our system. First, she or he must be recorded in the CRVS. And we have some periodic aids, monthly especially, and before we are paying the citizens and preparing the payment list, we have to check the situation of the state of the citizen from other government organizations, especially from the CRVS. Moreover, we have some new technologies and some new work for doing this more efficient way. We constantly query the information about CRVS, identity information, especially from CRVS of our country. And the least updated date is not older than 7 days. So when we do this periodically, then all of our aid programs that require this information are ready to not to wait for keeping up to date this information specifically or separately. For this, we have used some Kubernetes technologies to support and to make this efficiently. But the strong infrastructure of the technical infrastructure of the CRVS has made this possible for us, because they provide us a new branch service that provides us the only changing data. We send them a batch of data, for example, 1,000 citizens, and they send back us about 3,000 people, 30 people, for example. Their data has been changed for last 7 days, for example. Then we specifically query this 30 person, what has changed about them to make this process more efficient way. So we can do this more efficiently on the CRVS, but not all other systems can do this. Our infrastructure is quite well for doing that, but some of other government organizations which are not technically strong enough to provide a changing service, for example, changing data service. So we have some difficulties for checking every single data from other government organizations, and this results in taking long time for preparation of the payment list. Besides the CRVS, we have a social security system, as I said before, and Mr. Ercan has stated. Every single citizen is also recorded in the social security system of our country, and many of the social aids strongly depend on this information of social security, because some of our aids stipulates that if a citizen has a social security record in a specific type, then he cannot take this aid, but he can be a beneficiary of another aid. As I said, the Social Security institution has some difficulties because their data is deeply nested, and there are many changes within their data daily, maybe. And also, this results in a heavy load on their system. Many other government organizations and citizens are interacting with the Social Security system constantly. So we have some problems, but we believe that they will also be easily solved.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ali.
Shall I continue? Time is up.
Your time is up. I think we have exceeded the time, and we have quite a few inputs to come from others. We will continue our dialogue in other sessions, but this was very interesting. So now I'll invite Veronica from Chile to provide her perspective. Thank you so much, Erkan and Ali.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good day to everyone. I'm part of the Ministry of Social Development and Family from Chile. Go ahead, Anita, please. Whoever is managing the activity. I'm part of the Ministry of Social Development and Family. Our institution is part of the Chilean government. We are mandated to contribute to the design and application of policies and plans in the social area and social development. We also work with the other ministries and organizations in Chile to coordinate and to fulfill the idea of consistency and coherence in the plans and policies along the government in terms to be more efficient. And also we have a part of a ministry in charge of the studies of public investment. So this is the last part is the different from the whole. Our ministry created, yes, go ahead, please, thank you. We created the social registry of households, and I'm going to talk about how we relate with the civil registry in order to receive information from people who wants to be part of the social registry. The social registry is the one that we use to identify people in need, and we make a characterization of the families in terms of socio-economic conditions. The main byproducts of this social registry is the household composition, the social economic qualification, and also the home address. Also, we have some other information about education, conditions of the house, some health information, and we also connect this social registry with other public records in order to have administrative information from the families. This social registry is confirmed right now by 86% of the national population, around 17 million people. And the civil registry, in comparison, it has information of about 98% of the population. We estimate that only the immigrants are and not massively included on the civil registry. So we have the identification of every our people. Newborns are registered in the civil registry at the moment they are after birth. So everybody in the country has a national ID. So that this is very important for us. As I mentioned earlier, the social registry is the main source to identify the socioeconomic information of the families. It is composed by self-reported information, but also by these administrative records that are the most important part of the registry right now. Let's go to the next, please. So we have to give lots of clicks here. Well, let's say this is example of a newborn who her mother wants to include this newborn at the social registry. Since this newborn is already on the civil registry, she has an ID number, a national ID number for this baby, and she can access their social registry through the website or through municipality in presence. And she can introduce this national ID number at the social registry at the local level, and we ask if we have the information of that newborn. So the next, please. If we do have the information about this newborn because we had received another database which included already this newborn, we would say yes, okay, we identify this newborn, we have this her name, her last name, date of birth, and sex. The mother will be able to add up the rest of the information needed, self-reported information on the social registry, and she and her baby will be part of the social registry. But what happens if we don't have information about this baby? So no, we don't have that information. So we go to the CRVS and ask for with this national ID number for this baby, and we receive through web services a complete set of information about this newborn, the newborn ID number, the name, the last name, the date of birth, the place of birth, the sex, nationality, the father's name, father's national ID number, the mother's name, and the mother's national ID number. So we receive this information and we include that information on our registry and also to the social registry, and now the baby can be part of the social registry. This is how we work with the interoperability between the social registry and the civil registry. And that's it. It's very simple, the process for us.
Thank you so much, Veronica. That was very interesting to see the interoperability with CRVS. Thank you so much for your presentation and sharing your perspective. Now I will invite inputs from Bangladesh. Mr. Anil Chaudhary will present it. So Anil Chaudhary, can you please share your presentation?
Sure. Thank you, Anita. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just share the presentation. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I'll be very quick, even though I have quite a few slides. I just want to start with, as my previous speakers have also said, that the citizen actually interacts with government at different stages in his or her life. But everywhere you need an ID to interact with the government. So here I wanted to just show you the citizen's life cycle. The citizen is born, immunization happens, enrollment in school, various types of exams to the education system, becomes a voter, then happens, marriage happens, there are migration in and out of the country that happens and within the country. And then finally, death happens as well. So if we look at the entire government set of services, so health is there from beginning to end. Education in some parts of a citizen's life. Social protection, actually, since we have in Bangladesh social protection for uh, 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 pregnant women, lactating mothers, elderly. So that's actually a service that goes from really early on. We have stipend for primary school children as well. So it's early on to end of life as well. But then we have, when we look at civil registration, birth, death, marriage and divorce, what we're trying to incorporate in Bangladesh, that also comes in. So keeping this entire thing in mind and keeping the citizen's lens of how he or she interacts with the government, we try to develop our CRVS system, starting from birth registration, but by linking it with our national ID, which is given by our election commission. It used to be our voter ID that got converted into national ID about 13 years ago. What we started again, I mean, I'm not going to focus on the nitty gritty and the details of these small letters, but essentially what we started doing was to map out different agencies and how they use IDs. And many of these IDs became digital, became uninteroperable. And we wanted to bring a comprehensive enterprise architecture through a series of consultation. This is where WHO, UNICEF, Vital Strategy, many other international organizations actually helped us do this complete mapping. So this is what it looked like in a very simplistic form. So we have birth and death, we have national, we have education enrollment, we have health records, and all these have specific digital IDs. Health doesn't have a digital ID yet, but we're trying to create one, but others did. So essentially, we combined our CRVS and our national ID to create a unique ID, and that's the process that we are in right now. And that's what we're calling CRVS Plus. So it goes a little beyond the traditional or the accepted definition of CRVS around the world, but this is what is supporting us well. And this is what we see. So our most relevant and most used ID right now is our national ID. That's a 10-digit random number that was created as the voter ID about 15 years ago in 2007. And that became our national ID subsequently within 2 years. And now we're trying to basically make that ID interoperable with CRVS and all the different other IDs. And that's what we're calling CRVS Plus. And this is what it looks like from a social protection standpoint. 5 years ago in 2017, we introduced something called the choice architecture for citizens so that they could use their national ID and interact it with CRVS, which is birth registration, and get social safety net from any cash points using this service that we introduced 5 years ago called the Mapper. I mean, it's not a very professional name, but that's what we use within the country. That maps the ID of a person, if it's a national ID or a birth registration, to a financial account. And that account could be in a bank, that could be in a mobile financial service system, that could be in a post office. So we actually created interoperability across different types of cash points as well, and different types of accounts. And this interoperability within IDs also is giving us extreme mobility for the person. So Haider Ali, the person in this particular slide, can move around because of floods, because of COVID, because of other migration issues, can move around within the country and can actually access the social protection that is that he is eligible for, depending on the location, and can do cash out from any of these cash points. What we saw, this NID and the electronic KYC, Know Your Customer legislation that we actually created just before COVID, it really helped us enroll about 5 million new households during COVID using this scheme, the social protection tied to national ID and CRVS. Going forward, what we are seeing is that we're using telephone data, phone usage data, and again, an example that we saw in Togo, work done by Give Directly and University of California, Berkeley. They're using telephone data to understand a poverty ranking of a person based on poverty rank, poverty index, a person actually uses cell phones differently. So we're this is an experiment that we're just starting right now. Just wanted to mention that is that this is also where we will use interoperability between our mobile phone database that is in the hands of our telecom regulator and the national ID and the CRVS database as well to understand poverty ranking and do better targeting. The exploration in Togo actually shows us that you could reduce exclusion error and inclusion error using artificial intelligence and the mobile phone usage data against these parameters that was developed in University of California, Berkeley. So we are now working on this right now. So that is the story of how we are bringing interoperability into our payment systems and also in our ID systems around this concept of CRVS plus. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you, Anit, for your presentation. So now I'll invite the international organization representatives, first from UNICEF. Tomo, over to you.
Thank you, Anita. Hello, colleagues. My name is Tomo Kubo from UNICEF New York headquarters. I work on social protection here globally, and this has been a really rich discussion with a lot of great country examples that are showing the key points that I wanted to highlight. So thank you so much for all the presentation and colleagues organizing this knowledge exchange and platform. Anita, could you go to my slide, please? So I am not a digital specialist. I work on social protection in different contexts, and I start freaking out when I see different codes because that's not my strength of area. What I wanted to talk about is this passport. And when I say passport, it's a passport for protection. And passport for protection, one of the examples for it is birth registration, as we see. So we already seen from country examples in I think all three country examples that was mentioned about the importance of birth registration. And coming from UNICEF and child rights organization, I wanted to highlight the importance of this birth registration and focusing within the CRVS system, the focus on the birth registration and how it connects with social protection. So yes, so the first point on the focus on birth registration, which was already well said by colleagues, we call it often, it's a passport for protection. I have my passport. Hopefully it's not expired in 6 months. I don't use it regularly. It's not like this itself has a value, but when I need to go outside, when I need to prove my identity abroad, if I don't have this, there's nothing I can do. And that happens too often to many, many children around the world, especially in fragile humanitarian or at least developing contexts where they just don't have a certification or registration in the system. So they automatically are not engaging or not being able to access any services or any protection that they need for the lifetime. I think in Bangladesh, it was already highlighted how citizens interact with the government systems in different ways. In many of the examples, and maybe colleagues working here, you might be working in a context where most of the citizens or most of the children are already registered. But I also think this convergence initiative and the discussion we are having is quite important when we look at globally. In sub-Saharan Africa, 3 in 4 infants with recent data have no birth certificates within their infancy when they should have the birth certificate. So that is a big gap that we do want to look at, both in linking social protection and birth registration systems. But how do the efforts come together so that it increases the enrollment of social protection, or it helps the social protection information systems, but it is also contributing to children and families and citizens' rights to be registered and to be part of the system. Anita, in the first scenario, you were explaining how in the no database system, it can take months and days to get support while if you have an interoperable system, it can be within a few minutes. And I think that's also very important for children's perspective, because we are focusing really on the first 1,000 days first as the most important time. And if there's delay in registration and the databases are not linked, they could be not eligible for the benefits anymore, or they could be not receiving it at the time they need it. So I think there's also an importance of digital systems offering the right support at the right time to all families that are participating in the program. So the birth registration is important. Well, that was my first point. And the second point is, so how does it link with social protection? And as many cases have already been showing, it's directly linked with the implementation, enrollment, registration of child grant or maternity grant. It's a foundational information for system buildings. In many countries, if they don't have this accurate data on birth, their data statistics, even to calculate coverage or inclusion rates cannot be done. And it also has helped in country example that we'll see by having both birth registration data and social protection information systems to find out and cross match or understanding from both databases who are excluded from social protection or who are not being registered, and to help both rates and enrollments and participation increase together. So very concrete examples where these two, you can see the two sectors or two systems working together. In Lesotho, the child grant program increased the birth registration rate by 37%. And in Nepal, when I was working there, child grant increased the birth rate by 32%. So it used to be something around 55%. And with the child grant gradually expanding, in the area where there was expanding, the birth registration immediately went up to 90%, because that was also one of part of the efforts that children are registered and also are receiving the child grant. So we can see that it has, for families, this gives an opportunity to be both registered and also be part of the social protection system. So last, to conclude, some of the key approaches that would be important in linking the two efforts. One is already mentioned, and I think it's the heart of this initiative, which is to have the same standards identifiers across the two systems. Second part is to not use birth registration as a condition, and we see this too sometimes in the cases. If they don't have birth registration, oh sorry, we cannot provide you the social protection benefits, which is already excluding the most vulnerable. So the approach should be that if they are not registered, then it's not for them to be kicked out of all these systems or schemes. But how do we offer support or extend support so that they are coming into being registered and also being part of the social protection system, and removing the barriers that sometimes be common, sometimes they're different. It could be financial barriers, could be remoteness, could be the language, could be stigma, but what are the barriers and can we remove them altogether without making them conditions? Countries have already, I think Turkey, all of the countries have already mentioned how it's important that it's actually starting from health sector, social protection sector, and also linked with education system, and they all have databases that can help and reinforce both the birth CRVS and social protection systems. The fourth point, and this is more relevant to countries where they may not be at the universal birth registration rate, maybe in lower income countries or least developing countries. There might be a debate about, oh, we only have 30-40% of children registered, and they may have a tendency to wait until they reach something 90% or near universal until they think about connecting the system, because if it's 30 or 40%, it's not significant enough to start the system. One of the discussion I had with colleagues who were working on birth registration and child protection is, maybe from looking at the examples, even though the initial coverage of CRVS system or child social protection system is quite low, there is good practices or promising examples where they started at a small scale, and then as the rates increase, the system develops. So this could be a message of not, it depends all on the context, but not waiting until we achieve a full CRVS system until we linked, but starting where things are possible. I think there are other elements that we look at in terms of whether the policies level, or I think the coordination between these different sectors and different systems are in place, that are important factors to look in when making the linkages. The use of technology, that's obvious one for this group, and also it is also related and linked with household awareness, their incentives, their constraints that they are facing, as you can see in country example from Lesotho and Nepal, that there are factors that can help them reach both registration and social protection. So reaching to the families on their awareness and supporting their behavior or access to registration and social protection, we believe would be an important approach for linking those together. Thank you, Anita. Back to you.
Thanks, Tomo. Thank you so much for the inputs. Now invite ADB to make their remarks and inputs. Arun, can you
Sure,
take over?
thank you. Yes, happy to do that. Hi. I think my comments will be from the health perspective, and my colleagues are here in Q&A. They can come in, so we can cover a broader perspective on ADB's work in social protection. Don't have slides, so I'll be mostly brief. This is a summary of some work that ADB has recently contracted looking at digitalization of health insurers in our region. So I think health insurers are a particular use case for everything we've discussed here. They do have, I guess, a social protection mandate. We can certainly include them as social health insurance. So they would benefit, of course, in the same way in those scenarios that Anita laid out from an integration with CRVS, and that would improve the integrity of their beneficiary management. It would improve fraud detection, fraud elimination in their claims management, and overall improve their databases and transparency of their coverage. So we see those use cases. And speaking about the three countries we assessed, Laos, PDR, Nepal, and Armenia. These represent a very interesting and diverse group of countries on this integration with CRVS, but also with national IDs. All three countries have some form of health insurance. Of course, Armenia's health insurer is a state health agency, a pair. Nepal has two health insurers, and Laos has a health agency, I would say, which is gathering its capabilities to become an actual insurer. So across all three, we have a pretty much a spectrum of integration and interoperability, from almost none to pretty significant interoperability, but with work to be done in all cases. So what the situation suggests to us is that when we have nascent health insurers who are basically at a point where their systems are still developing, they don't have an actual MIS yet, and still have a lot of work to do to improve beneficiary and claims management, a sequencing and a prioritization process is necessary. When we talk about interoperability and integration. Obviously, in Laos, integration with the now ongoing registration of individuals into a national ID system, which has been there for some time, but coverage is still not universal, is paramount. That is a very, very important step for health insurers and social security organizations. Next step after that would be when the CRVS pilot in Laos is further developed and gets to greater coverage to include CRVS. So there's an implicit sort of sequencing perhaps, and that is something we can discuss. In Nepal, we have two insurers. They actually generate, one of them generates its own national ID, and we have OpenIMS colleagues here in this call, and they can certainly talk a lot more about that. And the systems are not yet fully using a unique national ID, the national ID that is being rolled out in Nepal, which makes further integration and interoperability quite complicated, and perhaps also then speaks to a sequencing and a prioritization approach for how we can improve health insurers' benefits. Finally, Armenia is where a lot of integration has happened, but as always, there is still a little bit more to do. And we have our colleague Saro Saturian here, who can speak a lot more about Armenia in detail. But here we need an actual real-time connection to the social registry system so that beneficiaries and their dependents can be verified and civil status can be checked. So while even Armenia has done a lot of work, there needs a further layer of interoperability. So as ADB, we stand ready to support these initiatives, and it was very exciting to hear about an open source software system. One question I do have is whether open-to-open connectability is something we can plan for. We have OpenIMS, which is a great solution on the health insurance MIS side, and now we have OpenCRVS. What is the level of interoperability and what are the code bases and how well can they talk to each other. So with that, Anita, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Erin, for those wonderful inputs. Now I'll invite an input from the private sector. Chaitanya from PwC, can you share your inputs on this topic?
Thank you, Anita. Good evening, or rather good afternoon, depending upon where each of you are joining. I'm Chaitanya. I'm from PwC India, and I've been working with various governments in this particular space, and thought we'll share a couple of aspects here, and that also correlates with the presentations made by the members in the earlier parts of the session. The first thing is, it becomes slightly easier in the countries that have a central database of all the citizens or the national IDs or the related content. But the biggest challenge is in several countries, such an ecosystem does not exist. I mean, including in India, where we do not have one single unified database of citizens or the residents or the civilians. Different provinces, different states maintain the data in different databases. And while there are initiatives like Aadhaar, for example, in India, which has been aimed at introducing a single unified database, it has seen its own legal hurdles and it is still not treated as a national ID database. So how do we really look at addressing this problem of having a unique ID database and integrating it with social benefits management system and ensuring that the right benefits are provided to right citizens? I guess in that particular issue, what we have seen as better working is, instead of one system relying on the other system as a source data, it is best to see how both the systems can rely on each other to improve the accuracy of the data in each of the systems. And over a period of time, both the systems help each other in consolidating the data, improving the accuracy, identifying the duplications, and eventually reaching the objective of creating consolidated and unified databases for both unique ID as well as the social benefits. Because a lot of citizens may not have taken a particular unique ID from a particular state government in India, whereas they must have been receiving various benefits under various government programs. So possibly integrating that data and using it to create the unique ID database at a state level is one way to look at it, and using the data back and forth by using the deduplication methods to create a unified database at both the ends. That is one way. Second is one interesting development that is happening in few parts of the world, particularly in South Asia, while other countries may already have it, is to create the unique family databases, not just the unique individual IDs, because there is a substantial investment done by the government towards the social benefits, and it becomes extremely difficult to obtain a view on what is the total benefit provided by the government to a family overall than an individual. And there are some successful initiatives where slowly the unique IDs are now slowly tagged to a family, and every family has a unique ID, by means of which the government is also able to identify and analyze what is the total benefit provided by the overall government to a given family, because there are certain business rules in social benefits and related payouts from the government, that if in a family, if a particular member is availing benefit from a particular program, then the member of the family cannot avail the benefit from some other program. But not many countries have gone in the direction of establishing the family ID and family database, and that is something that the CRVS systems and social benefit management systems can look at, working with the governments to move towards the family IDs and family databases. And the third one is, more importantly, yes, the ability to use the digital tools, the technologies, etc., is heavily dependent on overall maturity of the ecosystem itself. We cannot possibly have a great IT system, unless we have the supporting databases around birth and death registration, or the hospital systems where births happen, or with the IT systems across the agencies which are implementing the social schemes. So it is heavily dependent on the maturity of the ecosystem itself, but increasingly, there is a need to look at, how do we use the emerging tech in this space? For instance, one example that Anita has quoted right at the beginning of the session is about, how do we have, the old age people, for example, going to these offices, and there is a need for submitting the life certificate, every year in several countries to prove that yes, they are still alive. And based on the life certificate, they get the, continued social benefits from the government. So how do we use, emerging tech in addressing the problem of the, old age people to really come and visit these kiosks, etc. I mean, there are a couple of examples where, now they're using mobile-based application with image capture capability that can help in capturing the image wherever they are, from their residence, from their mobile, using the mobile application, and using that image to actually validate whether the individual exists or does not exist, and automatically renewing the social benefits for those individuals based on, that image capture facility. That's a huge advantage, particularly for the old age people, to reduce their burden to visit these offices to prove that they're still alive and to get those benefits. So use of the emerging tech, I guess, while a lot of efforts have already been invested in creating the databases, adopting the interoperability standards to integrate these databases, I guess going forward using the emerging tech, whether it is AI, whether it is imaging tools and technologies, to identify, the inaccuracies, for deduplication, etc. That's a way forward as we see. Thanks, Anita, and yeah, happy to hear from others.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Chaitanya. Now we will listen from Open CRVS and Hera. So we have probably just exactly 10 minutes for both of you. So we request you to manage time to 5 minutes each, please. Over to you, Ed, from Open CRVS.
Thank you, Anita. I will take exactly 5 minutes. I want to be fair. So my name is Edward Duffus. I lead on product strategy and sustainability at Open CRVS. And Open CRVS, as you've seen, is an open source civil registration platform specifically designed for low resource settings. That means making sure it's, as we can see here, interoperable, secure, and has some of the features that are often the challenges of civil registration in low resource settings. Such that it works offline, for example, in rural areas, simple standardized processes with a really easy to use user interface, highly configurable for different local contexts, for example. Just before, I mean, it's fine to flick through the slides. I'll take 5 minutes, but I think I just wanted to make a few points because the conversation has been so rich already. I'm also inspired by the term passport to protection in terms of birth registration, providing the very data required for protection, particularly of infants from birth. But of course, it's the interoperability part which actually starts making this a reality at scale, where we see systems working together, as the demo showed. This actually gives us the possibility to realize this, across a country. And of course, as Tumu mentioned, universality is key to this. So universal birth registration within a system like Open CRVS is the key to, therefore, universal access to social protection systems as well. Great to see the demo working that you showed earlier using Open CRVS. That's just an existing interface accessible through OpenHIM, as you demonstrated. We've got new interfaces coming, a new API in December, which will provide a much richer functionality to provide a safer, limited set of data that can be searched for within Open CRVS and provide that for social protection purposes. So that's all to come as well. So briefly, a few slides. So this is a slide really showing how Open CRVS in the middle is interoperable in terms of social protection, but in many other ways too. Really, interoperability is absolutely key for civil registration and to ensure that the value of the data captured within the civil registration system is really capitalized upon. So that means interoperable with health system to collect vital events data, sharing data with national statistics, being interoperable with the unique identification system. For example, the open source version MOSIP. We've conducted a technical proof of concept to ensure that OpenCRVS works together with MOSIP, providing a full foundational identity system. And as you can see here, and is the purpose of this presentation or call today, whether it's through a national population register or otherwise, providing data for government service delivery in general, all of these different functions at the top here, including social safety nets and social protection, is really what we're enabling. Next slide, please. Great. A number of these interoperability use cases have now been mentioned, but obviously we're trying to support them all, whether it's notification from OpenCRVS of an eligible participant for enrollment or discontinue of that service that was shown earlier, through to sharing performance management data to be able to track how many people have received Social Security and Protection Scheme payments, and sharing civil registration data to inform the calculation of Social Security entitlements as well. The notification element is something which did not come across in the demonstration. I'll show you just in a second how that works. Next slide, please. Super. But this was the use case which was shown in the demo. So a notification of birth from the social protection system, for example, a mother enrolling in a social protection system to receive a grant for a newborn child, and the system verifies the age of the child within OpenCRVS, for example. And of course, if unregistered, to get to the universality point, can then trigger the birth registration process. Next slide, please. But in terms of those use cases which are supported by the notification or the sharing of the birth registration event from the civil registration system, this is an overview. Hopefully this answers a few questions which are asked along the way in which OpenCRVS does this. So it uses an enterprise service bus with standardized interoperability using OpenHIM, the user interface of which you saw in the demo. It uses an open standard, so we've in fact extended the HL7 FHIR standard, and that's the Fast Health Interoperability Resources standard for civil registration purposes. So that could be used as a de facto standard for sharing information from a civil registration system. So it's great that digital convergence is about starting to create those standards that could be used for that purpose. In this diagram, you see the sharing of information through a webhook. So that's unlike the API, which is obviously a request for information. The webhook is a subscription-based model where birth and death events, for example, will be published to subscribing systems which are authorized to do so. And on the right-hand side, to answer the question about which systems, which social protection systems, open versions are currently integrating with OpenCRVS, here's some examples: OpenSPP, OpenGTP, and Core MIS. There's a parallel initiative called the G2P Connect project going on, where we've created a sandbox where these systems are currently being integrated live, also together with MOSIP and payment platforms as well. So that's really exciting, and we'll have that up and running after World Bank meetings next week, so that everyone can get involved and see how these systems can work together. I think I'm right towards the end. Last slide, please, Anita. I've gone as fast as I can. Yeah, this is us. If you want to check out more from us, please go to opencrvs.org and read our documentation, and likewise set up integration points with your systems, and OpenCRVS will support you to do so. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ed. Thank you for the inputs and timely maintaining the time for your intervention. Now I'll invite Hera to provide their inputs. Over to you, Dovel.
Yes, thank you. So I'll just quickly introduce myself. I am Davila, a solution architect from WCC, based in the Netherlands. With me today is also Craig Stabler, who's a senior solution architect. Yeah, next slide, please, Anita. WCC has 25 years experience and is built on a core matching technology. And on top of that technology, we built products in 2 domains, in employment and identity. And we have many customers across the globe, which quantified means that we face with 500 million of identities every day, and 500 million identities we have registered with our products. So yes, and you can click through the animations, please. Yeah, so I will introduce our civil registration product called HERA. Which is important for today's topic. And let's take a scenario of a couple who would like to register their baby. And they might be, for example, very remote from government offices with limited access to register their baby and potentially no internet connection. So with our product, we do solve those problems and we provide registration on multiple devices. We also offer an offline module. And also, as Edvard mentioned, we do also provide interactive notifications, which are very important for interoperability. So when the parents are in the knowledge of their registration and when to actually come to collect their birth certificate, which means that our birth registration is very efficient and flexible. So the most important is that we do provide the unique identification number and the birth certificate can be printed instantly. So after multiple registrations of multiple vital events, vital statistics reporting, dashboards, and interactive maps are available for governments, statistic offices to make important decisions. With that in mind, we do support United Nations guidelines and interactive and open APIs to connect to multiple systems to send that data. Yes, next, Anita, please. So I heard some interesting country sample cases. So I would like to provide one more, which is our HERA reference, the Gambia. We went live in the Gambia in August this year, and previously Gambia faced with a mainly paper-based civil registration system, which means that it was hard to track any kind of vital statistic data. Duplication was a risk, and also if a person would lose a birth registry certificate, it would be very hard to print a new one, which means that a person has no access to any other human rights. So with modernizing civil registration, we actually solved those problems in Gambia. This is the picture from the training of our colleagues in Gambia, and currently they are in the process of mass registration. So meaning that every person is granted a national identification number and a birth certificate is printed. But not only that, which is very important for today's topic, is that every person is also automatically enrolled in a national health insurance scheme. And this card, blue card in the picture, is printed instantly. What you can see as well that we provide QR codes for validity of those documents. So what is next for Gambia is that we are there to provide deaf registration next, and which is important for today. We are also in the process of connecting with other national ID systems. And on that note, I would like to thank for this webinar, which was very insightful. And we are supporting the initiative and will be there to support the next steps.
Thank you so much, Noel, for your
Thank you.
inputs and for thank you for your inputs and for commitment to support the initiative. We will connect with you again to show interoperability with HERA along with OpenCRVS in the upcoming workshops on this stream of work. Now with this, we just open the event to Q&A or discussion. We've seen some side discussions happening in the chat. Those are more about implementations. If there are anybody who would like to ask a question or make a comment, they are welcome to raise their hands. So we have the first question for you, Dovell. Is HERA open source software?
No, it is not open source software. And we have different kind of payment processes, schedules, which we can take that offline, or maybe Craig, if you want to add to that. Yeah.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, is it open source? No, but we've sold here into a number of different countries. Dovil's mentioned one, the Gambia, also Laos. And we have actually, each time we get a different request depending on the country. So we have had requests for, let's say, access to our source, the source code. So depending on the country and depending on the request, we can enter into an escrow agreement to provide, if you like, access to our source code. So that, but we treat each country separately. So strictly speaking, we're not an open source product or commercial company, but we have looked at each case individually, and we can do that moving forward.
So much. Anybody else would like to ask questions or any comments? We have some time, 10 minutes.
Good morning. One of our first presenters said, I mean, it's not for the last presentation, but I think it was someone at the beginning who said that they are using cell phone to notify the recipient of social benefit. In many questions, cell phone number get update very easy because in the low-income families, typically they have a prepaid service. So sometimes if they don't pay the service, then they get the number out, take it out for the company. So how to keep the system outdated when the cell phone numbers change very quickly? What is the experience about?
Thanks, Louis. So we have another question in the chat again for Hera. You are confirming that it's being used for CRVS, right?
Correct, yes. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. So Laos, PDR, and the Gambia are the two countries that we're actively working on deploying here at the moment. Yeah, different modules. We're also working with other countries, but that's more of an earlier stage.
Are there any more questions in the chat? No. So probably I'll just do a countdown if any more people want to comment, share their experiences or anything relevant to this stream or any questions. 3, 2, 1. I think either everybody has understood everything and all questions are addressed, or we are all looking to go back home soon. So with this, I think I'll request Thomas to wrap up this session for the day today. Thomas, over to you. I'll share your slides.
All right, thank you, Anita. Before the slides come up, my name is Thomas Uba. I hope you can hear me. Just confirming again. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
Yes, Thomas.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, my name is Thomas Uba. I'm a social protection specialist with the World Bank based in Abuja, Nigeria. I work primarily on social protection delivery systems, which really part of which involve information systems, as we all know. Listening to the conversation, I actually believe everyone in this meeting understands the need and the importance of interoperable information systems that support the delivery of social protection programs. The conversation has been very insightful, and I want to really thank everyone for making the time to contribute. The countries, the private sector, the development partners, and everyone else, who asked their questions and contributed in one way. And we're all going to need to continue this support in order to achieve the interoperability goals that has been set out by the Digital Convergence Initiative. So I'd like to take us through a couple of the planned next steps. If we could go to the next slide, Anita. As previously mentioned at the beginning of this session, DCI has conducted a series of workshops that showcased how several countries were already establishing interoperable digital tools. And in this new series, that's Interoperability in Action, a number of workshops are planned on the 19th of October, November the 2nd, and November the 9th, some of which dates are still yet to be confirmed. And these will aim to cover, interoperability of social protection management information systems and payments, and also national ID. And one particular workshop will be focused on systems architecture and the data standards that will be required for interoperability as we move forward. In addition to these, DCI will be forming working groups that will focus on on developing the processes, the data, and the API standards for interoperability across the various information systems, which include civil registries, payment systems, and national IDs. There will also be a working group focusing on architecture, and beyond these, so that's beyond the major administrative information systems, DCI will work on developing standards, standard interfaces for social registries with program management information systems, farmer registries, disability registries, and other beneficiary type registries. Next slide, please. So, on behalf of the initiative, I think Anita, you can just click through everything, so I can just keep speaking. I think on behalf of the initiative, I want to further extend an already existing invitation to everyone to continue supporting this process of consensus building so that we can achieve harmonized standard. I ask that you help spread awareness of the initiative and the standards that will be produced, and also promote adoption of these interoperability standards and interfaces and the other outputs that will come. And for those in the room who are involved in producing information systems, the idea is that you continue to adopt these standards and contribute through feedback as well. You may want to participate by joining the various working groups, and you are encouraged to share knowledge, share existing materials, review the outputs, and provide feedback by joining group discussions or validation workshops. And we ask that you feel free to contribute to the drafting of these standards alongside our facilitators. Next slide, Anita. So before we close, let me say that you may connect to the Digital Convergence Initiative online through their website and the discussion board, discussion forum, and any of the social media shown in this slide on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. And we look forward to engaging conversations as we have had today on future interoperability standards, and hopefully at the end of the day we'll actually achieve the goals that have been set by the DCI. So thank you everyone for connecting and participating, and I look forward to connecting again soon.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you everyone for the participation in this. We will share the recording as well as the slides subsequently. So for those who have missed, you can watch, or you can recommend people to watch this. We also would solicit nominations for some of these working groups. So if you're interested in contributing to the standards in any of these 3 groups, we will reach out separately. But if you would like to volunteer now itself or spread the word, that would be super useful. Thank you all. Thanks for joining. Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Thank you.